Welcome to Story Time. We are back again with The Farthest Away Mountain, picking it up in chapter 9, which is entitled The Painted Snow. In a few more minutes, her head and shoulders came out into brilliant sunlight. The glare was too much for her eyes after the darkness, and she had to close them at first, but gradually she peeped through her eyelashes and saw that part of the reason for the brightness was that she was high above the snow line. All around her was snow. She knew it was snow because of the cold, but it was very odd just the same. The colored Snow Witch had clearly been hard at work here. All the ground looked like a piece of paper on which some child, without the least idea of colors, had been playing with paints. A bad-tempered child, rubbing and scrubbing with his brush and pouring dabs of paint here and there at random. It really looked unpleasant, especially to Dakin, who was used to the shining, pure white of the valley snow in winter and did not like all these purples and reds and oranges where they did not belong. She looked about her. There was no one, no thing in sight, only the wild, clashing colors all glinting evilly in the sun. She searched the slopes for a patch of white, and at last she saw a very small triangle, like a bit of white paper that the child had by accident forgotten to color. But it was at least 10 steps up the mountainside from the mouth of her cave. How would she reach it? She saw no other way than just wading through to it. Zog had warned her about the colored snow, but he hadn't actually told her not to walk on it. She pushed her knapsack out first and dumped it onto a patch of green snow and then pulled herself out. There was no snow on the very rim of the cave, so she sat there to put on her knapsack, but when she picked it up, she caught sight of something on the bottom of it which made her drop it again very quickly. Every part which had touched the snow was crawling with green caterpillars. Now it wasn't that Dakin minded caterpillars in the ordinary way, but these were not ordinary caterpillars, such as you find on cabbages. These were big slug-like things, slimy looking, and Dakin suddenly saw they had small but busy jaws, munching, munching, munching. Heavens, they're eating my knapsack! Holding it up by the straps, she banged it hard against a rock to shake the witchy creatures off. They fell off all right and disappeared at once into the snow, but the whole bottom of Dakin's knapsack was gone, eaten by them in a few seconds, and everything that was left in it tumbled out and fell into the snow too. She just managed to grab the book of poems before it disappeared. The snow everything fell into was blazing red, and when Dakin tried to reach into it to recover the bread, matches, candle, and the knife and the mug, she snatched her hand away. Have you ever touched what they call dry ice? It is so cold it feels red hot, and this is how the snow felt, the red snow felt. Dakin could not touch it. She could have cried when she examined her knapsack or what was left of it. It was impossible to put anything into it now. It was like an upside-down bag with a couple of straps attached. No food, no candle, nothing. Well, but at least she had the poems. She opened the book and read one to cheer herself up a little. Child of wisdom, child of courage, you are nearer than you know. Underneath the ugly colors, seek and find the honest snow. Well, that's very funny, thought Dakin. I thought I knew every poem in this book, but I don't remember that one. She wanted to read it again, but having taken her eyes off of it for a moment, now when she looked down at the page, she couldn't find it again. Wait a minute. How did it go? Child of wisdom, child of courage. Oh, pooh to all that, thought Dakin, who had no conceit. Nearer than you know. To what? The summit, perhaps? Oh, what was the rest? Suddenly she remembered. Of course, the witch's colors would only be on the surface of the snow. The proper white stuff must be underneath. She stood up and with the toe of her boot gave the red patch of snow a sudden kick. It was like putting your finger very quickly through a candle flame. It didn't burn. The red snow scattered, and underneath lay whiteness. Ahead lay a purple patch, like a big splash of poison. Whee! Cried Dakin. and sticking the toe of the other boot under the edge of it sent it flying upward in a scurry of glittering violet crystals. From then on, it was not only easy but fun. She walked boldly forward, kicking the colored snow aside, until she stood safe on the island of white. Behind her lay 10 white boot prints through 5 different colors. "I've done it! I've done it!" she shouted. She turned again to face upward. The colored snow stretched ahead of her, but she feared nothing from it now. But above that loomed a tall, jutting rock that looked like a sort of castle. It stood straight up from the top of the snow, black, high, forbidding. It must be the summit, she thought, and her blood froze. Because just where the door would be, if it had been a real castle, was a vast black cave. All this happened while the echoes of her foolish shout of triumph were still booming around the crags. "Done it! Done it! Done it!" There was a moment's silence when, even deeper and more frightening than the silence of the wicked wood, and then she heard a sound that turned her heart to ice. Chapter 10, Graw. It was a wild and terrible cry, not the sort of cry we ever hear in the world now, but something from the far past, before there were any men on earth, when weird and fearful creatures had it all to themselves, and then came something even worse, the slow, low whistling of great, leathery wings beginning to beat. "It's the flying monster," thought Dakin, rooted to the ground with terror. And so it was. Out of the black mouth of the castle cave it came, flying very slowly and deliberately, twisting its great horned head from side to side with its wicked eyes catching the sunlight and throwing off sparks of light. One look at its face told Dakin at once that there was no poor, good-hearted creature that like the gargoyles, imprisoned by some evil spell in an ugly body. Here was evil itself. Its enormous, narrow wings, black and shiny, like those of some gigantic black bat, sighed through the air as if it were in no hurry, for no prey could escape it. But the most awful part about it was its great hooked talons. These hung down under its huge featherless body, and every few seconds as it flew, they opened and closed, as if getting ready to... It had seen her. It turned, wheeling, and swooped toward her, with its spear-like beak pointing straight at her, its terrible eyes glaring. Dakin turned too and tried to run, but she forgot about the colored snow. As soon as she stepped into a big mustard yellow area, she stuck fast. The snow held her like tar, and she couldn't run. It was like the most terrible nightmare in the world. It was coming. Its great black shadow was over her now, and now, and now. It was picking her up. Yes, lifting her up with its terrible claws. Luckily, the sharp talons only caught her cloak. It lifted her clear out of her boots. Dakin felt the icy air on her bare feet as she whisked higher and higher into the sky. She closed her eyes tight, wondering why she didn't just die of fright and have it done with it. After a while, though, when nothing else happened, that's to say, the dreadful creature neither dropped her nor ate her, but simply flew through the air with her, she cautiously opened them. She quickly closed them again, after a glimpse of the ground far below, but curiosity soon got the better of her. She actually managed to look around this time. The monster was carrying her down the slopes of the mountain. The colored snow was left behind, and now they were flying over a wide gray area that looked like a desert. Of course, that would be the Sea of Spikes. And now, looking downward and ahead, she saw the sudden lovely green garden of the meadow with Old Crow's cabin right in the middle of it. In a matter of moments, the creature had brought her right back to the place it had taken her nearly a whole day to climb up from. Oh, it was too bad. But Dakin forgot to be frightened. all that walking, all that climbing, all that cold and thirst and being frightened. She'd teach that horrible, rotten monster to leave her alone. She began to jump and struggle. She reached above her head and took hold of one of the talons, which was locked in the strong folds of her cloak. She pulled herself up by it until her face was level with its black, bony leg. Then she bit it as hard as she could. The creature let out a squawk, a shrill squawk of pain and surprise, and would have dropped her, but she hung on. It swooped low, flexing its claws, trying to fling her off. It made awkward passes at her with its beak, but because she was underneath it, it couldn't see her. And now they were right above the cabin. The monster was hovering in the air, trying to get at her. Looking down, she saw the chimney opening right below, not more than a few feet away. Quickly, she tore the buttons off her cloak, and in another second, she was falling free. We have to stop there. That was chapter 9 and 10. Maybe you could click on the next one tomorrow when you do story time.